Welcome to the CodeCast podcast. Real-world insights for your daily medical coding and billing processes. And now, here's your host, Terry Fletcher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 139th episode of the CodeCast podcast. We are now halfway through June. Can you believe it? I can't even believe we're in June. But for anyone who has kids finishing up their distance learning school year, graduating, and didn't get to celebrate from any grade or any age, college, grade school, high school, we really want to congratulate them on a job well done, getting through this tough time. And as a young person having their lives change on a dime, it's hard to pivot and regroup like us adults have to do it. So hopefully they're looking forward to their summer vacation and some time to get back to some normalcy and to have some fun. My topic today is going to expand on one of the questions I addressed in my Top 10 Tuesday platform in May, and that was about addendums to the records. Did you know that all corrections are not addendums? They're late entries, addendums, and then corrections. So we have all kinds of different scope of that. And payers have certain rules, and the Medicare Integrity Manual has rules, and individual MAC carriers, which are the Medicare Administrative Contractors, providers, they have rules as well. So I want to make sure that you never run into a legal issue or an OIG audit where something was changed in your record inappropriately, and then you get called on it later. Recently, I had a physician just the other day who asked if he could add an addendum to his record. And I said, sure, not thinking everything of it. I thought he knew the protocol. And he said, okay, I'm going to have you review it after I do it. I said, okay. So because I first reviewed it because he was trying to bill a level 5 service. And I said, this isn't a level 5. So anything that when I review, we'd call it a prospective audit. So before it's billed. And if it doesn't audit at the right level of service, then it goes back to the physician to let them know, but it goes out as I audited at, and it audited actually at a level 3. So when I went back to re-review the note, all he did was add it like it never was there before. And I'm like, oh, no. I had actually screenshotted the last one, so thank God I did that. But I said, you're going to get tagged for this. That makes it suspect clinical documentation, and you never want to give the appearance that you're altering a record because then it takes down the integrity of the record. So we want to be more of a best practices approach. So we're going to take a look at what the rules are. I also have an article on this topic in ICD-10monitor.com this last week. So make sure you check out that article for more details. And it's really almost a verbatim. Well, I'm not going to be reading from it, but I am going to be commenting from a lot of the material there, but it's almost a transcript of what this podcast is going to be today. So hopefully it'll help you and give you some information so that you're coding correctly and that there's not going to be an issue if the record is ever questioned or if anybody ever needs a copy of it, that it's above reproach. So when I'm talking about this topic, I want to give you all of the different definitions of addendums, late entries, and corrections. Because when you have this occurrence in the documentation, CMS and the MAC carriers, they know that this is a legitimate practice. They know that happens everywhere. And so that's why they added this information to the Medicare Program Integrity Manual, Chapter 3, and it does address the topic. And it talks about a deficiency when it's discovered in the provider's notes. It's common practice to create a late entry or an addendum or to make a minor correction to the medical record. And so it's important to know exactly how to make those corrections, how to make those changes. But first, it's important to know the difference between those different possibilities and that they're handled differently. So you need to know how to apply these corrections, how to accurately ensure that not only the clinical documentation the integrity is kept into place, but also to ensure that the correctness to the medical record prior to the claim submission and or medical record review will be considered in determining the validity of the services billed. Because you want it to, if you're going to add to it, it would have to be pre-billed. Because if the changes appear in the record following the payment determination based on medical review, so post-billed, they only look at the original record. And that's the only thing that can be reviewed in determining the payment of services billed. And that's right in that Medicare Program Integrity Manual. So we have to be careful to understand that concept. Noridian puts it in there as well. And I'm also going to give you some more policies on this as I give you some examples. So the first thing and we're going to talk about here, is talking about late entries. So a late entry is made to the medical record when information that was absent from the original entry is recorded after the original note was created, dated, and signed, and possibly billed to the payer. So a late entry supplies additional information that was omitted from the original entry. The late entry bears the current date, is added as soon as possible, is written only if the person documenting has total recall of the omitted information, and then signs the late entry. So an example, let's say we had a trauma patient at the hospital, and a late entry following that treatment of a multiple trauma might say, quote, "The left foot was noted to be abraded laterally, John Doe MD, 3/15/2020. So again, this is something that was absent from the original entry, okay? So a telehealth late entry, and this is one I'm dealing with all the time now. So the total time via audio and video two-way visit was 33 minutes. My Epic MyChart failed to add the time component on the May 1st encounter, but was time stamped in the internal schedule and video visit with the patient. Mark Smith, MD, 5/6/2020, entered by nurse practitioner Susan Jones. So the reason I did this one, this was actually taken from an actual late entry that I had to deal with a physician. There was no documentation of the two-way visit, and the time was missing. So I couldn't code anything because it basically, the patient came in, or I should say the patient was, it was prompted through telehealth, and without having that statement of what platform and that it's audio visual or if it's audio only, and without having time, if your documentation on the medical decision making is terrible, there's nothing we can code. And so I queried the physician and said, hey, this is missing. We need to either add to this as a late entry, and why, and make sure that it's dated, signed, and that it's before it goes out anywhere. Now, the late entry I said was absent from the original entry. That means the information was available, but it didn't make it to the chart. And so that's the difference between that and an addendum, because an addendum to a medical record provides additional information that was not available at the time of the original entry. So addendums are typical for contracts to efficiently update terms and conditions. However, an addendum to a patient's medical record, it has specific rules that must be followed to avoid potential inferences of a potential fraudulent note. And then just like in late entries, any addendums made after the claim is submitted will not be considered when Medicare reviews the medical record. So be aware of that. So the addendum should be timely and bear the current date and reason for the additional or clarification of information being added to the medical record, and be signed by the person making the addendum. So an example of an addendum could be, quote, "The chest x-ray report not available for review on March 1st was reviewed and showed an enlarged cardiac silhouette. Jane Doe MD, 3/15/2020. So this is where you're adding information or a test that wasn't available before, and you're trying to support that, maybe that higher level of service. Now, a correction to the medical record, never write over or otherwise obliterate the passage when an entry to a medical record is made in error. So draw a line through the erroneous information, keeping the original entry legible, signer date and date the deletion, stating the reason for the correction above or in the margin, and document the correct information on the next line or space with the current date and time, making reference back to the original entry. Now that all sounds great if it is a paper chart, right? Well, now they've updated this in the Integrity Manual that says correction of an electronic record should follow the same principles of tracking both the original entry and the correction with the current date, time, reason for the change, and initials of person making the correction. And then they say you should generate a hard copy from the electronic medical record, and then both the records must show the correction. So any corrected record submitted must make clear the specific change made, the date of the change, and the identity of the person making the entry. What's interesting about corrections and what's interesting about late entries and addendums, you'll notice that the wording doesn't specifically state that somebody other than the provider who made the original entry shouldn't be making that entry, but it doesn't state that they can't. So this is where you just have to make sure that it's clear who's adding this to the chart. Now, I would say best practices is if the physician, it needs to add something, it should be the physician. If it's one of the mid-level providers, and they're the ones that should add it. So the person that started with the original entry should be the one that add it, but that's giving you a professional opinion of how to keep this clean. So here's something that is an addition in the program, the Medicare's Program Integrity Manual, and also Noridian added to this. They added some guidelines as far as addendums go and late entries. They have clearly identified whether the entry is a late entry or an addendum. So again, just to reiterate, late entry, absent from the original entry, but it was there, you just missed it. And then addendum, not available at the time of the original entry. Enter the additional information as additional information. Do not make it appear that the information you are adding was part of the original document, like I mentioned before. Enter the date of the late entry or addendum. The late entry or addendum must be signed. Identify the original content, so it shouldn't be altered. Make sure the late entry or addendum does not override the original entry. If you are not the author of the original entry, note that you confirmed the late entry or addendum with the original author. It is not recommended that ancillary staff enter addendums in the physician notes. It should come from the original provider for best practices, but I can't tell you it's mandated that they can't. I just don't think it's appropriate. And then note the justification for the modification. That actually comes directly from Noridian Medicare. And then lastly, providers are reminded, and this obviously because it's the integrity manual, they talk about falsification, the falsification of a medical record. Just so you know, that is a felony offense and is viewed seriously when encountered. So here they gave some examples of what falsifying records would include. And believe me, if it's being seen as you're trying to do this, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Creation of new records when records are requested. So let's say that you billed for a surgery because your physician gave you a face sheet and wrote down that they did an appendectomy, but there's no documented operative report. You better be careful, because if you billed for it without it being documented and dictated, you're in error. The doctor can't go back then and dictate it. The hospital will require it, and you may have to refund some money. So I would never submit a claim on a surgery or anything unless I've got documentation. You hold those claims. Backdating entries, I've seen that before. Post-dating entries, I haven't seen that too often. Predating entries, I do see that. Writing over or adding to existing documentation, except as described in how to do it correctly. So those are things you have to be mindful of and be very careful not to fall in the trap of, doing it incorrectly where you're just going back and bulking up the record. We don't want to see you do that because that can just run into all kinds of problems. My coding question today comes from one of my orthopedic practices, and I actually appreciated this question. And the question says, I have a question about 2 visits on the same date. So generally, no, we cannot bill from the same practice 2 visits. We understand that unless there is a different specialty. But I'm wondering if we have any room for appeal for 2 visits within our practice on the same day when one provider has referred the patient to his or her partner due to the partner's surgical approach expertise. The patient could have been scheduled to return another day, but in an effort to limit the patient's staff exposure to a return visit appointment in the age of COVID, the visits occurred on the same date. Okay, so this is an interesting concept because at first glance, no, you're not going to get paid if it's the same type of physician, same specialty, regardless of the circumstances. So that's going to be a hard thing. Now, if you want to pursue that scenario because of COVID, and this is what we're doing. And if it's a commercial plan, it's something to maybe consider, but as a rule, no. If it's not a separate specialty or even a separate subspecialty, it's just a physician that has maybe some greater expertise in that area, it's going to be really hard to try to get both of those paid on the same date. And remember, a lot of times, and this may seem harsh, it's not meant to be, but sometimes the more convenient we are for the patient, the less money we make. So we have to really just be mindful of some of the inclusivity on the visits as well. It wasn't clear if this was via telehealth. It just said that there were 2 visits on the same day. I'll assume since it was orthopedic that the patient actually came into the office and they just didn't want to have them come back. But I would say on that one, you're kind of out of luck on that one. So that was a tough question, I'm sure. Our coding question is brought to you today by FormStack, a secure workplace productivity platform built to produce solutions to the everyday work that slows organizations down. FormStack is a data collection and management tool that allows you to build forms and surveys in minutes and store your submissions in an encrypted database. Many of FormStack's customers work with their IT teams to roll out the software throughout the entire office so employees can work autonomously on projects like updating patient intake processes or automating patient satisfaction surveys. And IT can reset, assured knowing FormStack maintains HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, and WCAG compliance. If you're looking for a hassle-free way to revamp your data collection process, look no further than FormStack. Visit formstack.com/codecast to learn more and sign up for a free day trial of their solution. Again, formstack.com/codecast. So my personal tidbit today is actually a statement I wanted to make that is weighing heavy on my heart and my mind this week. And I was really not sure if I was going to make it, but as a leader in the healthcare field, I think it's important that I speak up and comment on my position on inequality and discrimination, and to make sure we are clear that I am against racism of any kind and continually look for ways to fight systemic racism. There is no place for it in our society or in the healthcare community. I have dedicated my professional and personal life to helping others in any way I can without regard to race, gender, or any prejudices, and I won't tolerate anyone else treating people with disrespect based on those things. I'm going to end with that today. I hope this country heals soon and tomorrow is better for everyone. So for me, it was not a good day, had a couple things happen, and I just wanted to make sure that my position was clear because I love all of you. So thank you for spending your Tuesday listening to me and listening to the CodeCast podcast. Everybody make it a great day.
For more information on medical coding, billing, auditing, and compliance, including how to hire Terry, follow Terry on Twitter @TerryCoder1 or visit her website at www.terryfletcher.net. Podcast producer Joe Kuzma. Music producer Dassassin Music.